In this video, we are ready to start adding value and shading to our portrait drawings with our ebony pencil supplies. So we have a few things here to help with that. So you want to make sure you have everything out and set up to get started. Virtual students that are working from home, you can use a regular pencil and blend with your finger. So I have my photo printed in black and white. This is not my only resource, but it is going to help me see where values change within my grid. So we are still using the grid as we work on our shading. Another thing I can do is pull up this photo on my iPad while I'm drawing. If that helps me see some of these values more clearly, I can also zoom in on photos to see different details, like maybe the eyelashes or what's going on, like the jewelry here or the ear, like these little tiny details. So using your iPad is a good resource. I can't do that now since I'm filming with mine. So just remember that you can use that at any time. We also have our eye, nose, and mouth drawing that we did, and any other practice that you can do with facial features is going to help you for this unit. I have my ebony pencil, 2 different size blending stumps, and an eraser. I also have a ruler because a ruler can help me see what angle things are happening at. Because I have my sketch done, but as I shade, I might lose a few details. So I might want this ruler to kind of think, what angle do things happen at, or how far apart something is. So that's off to the side and handy. I also really like to use these smaller erasers so that I can get into really small areas as I'm erasing. So whatever you have available to work with will be great. So what I'm gonna do first is erase some of the darker grid lines, especially across the skin tone. You do not want to have to deal with those as you're shading. If you think back to your skull drawing, could you see your grid through your work in the end or not? I want to be able to see part of my grid, but like I still have the grid in the background. So if I need to view part of the grid somewhere that I've erased, I can always line up those marks again because I'm not erasing stuff in the background. We want to focus on filling in the person first. That's our main goal for this unit. Don't worry about the background yet. We'll go over all of the options that you have with the background as we continue to move forward with this project. I'm just going to make sure that I erase more of the grid kind of all around because that's going to be worth your time later. In this video, I'm going to start with the skin tone, just so that I have somewhere to start my directions. You can start wherever you'd like to, and there'll be more videos below this one that show you different features and different techniques for different areas you might encounter with your drawing. So I want to make sure that I'm using my tools the way that I've learned throughout this unit on my value scales, skull drawing, eye, nose, and mouth drawings. I want to use the side of my pencil when I can. Remember, if I scribble areas and rely on my blending stump to blend that, I'm still going to see those scribble marks. So I want to use the side of my pencil, build up layers slowly of value, and my goal is to try and match the value I see in my photo on my paper. I can also use the value that I have on my blending stump. Remember, we're trying to keep one side a little bit lighter, one side for darker values, just so that it's easier to use over time, but eventually you're gonna have to start cleaning those off. So just wiping them back and forth on a piece of paper will do the trick. And if you're using the smaller blending stumps, try and hold them towards the end and push. If we hold them right in the middle and push down, they're probably gonna snap at some point. All right, so I'm ready to get started, and what I'm gonna do is just start with the value over here on her skin tone. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm just picking a place where it's gonna go dark, and then it gets a little bit lighter, and then a little bit darker. So that's my goal, that's what I'm trying to observe here. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of pencil down on the paper where it's the darkest in this section. So I'm using my grid, I'm working in these boxes right here. Then I'm gonna use my blending stump. I'm actually just gonna lighten that value a little bit. I'm gonna use my blending stump to get like a smooth value across this area. Now, I'm not worried about the ear yet. Like, I can only worry about so much at a time. It becomes overwhelming if you try to focus on too many spaces at once. So I think I already need to lighten this up. I'm using the side of my eraser so I can kind of lighten things smoothly so that I'm not getting harsh eraser marks. I'm gonna clean off this edge of my blending stump so that I have a little bit lighter gray to work with. lighter here. A little bit darker by the cheekbone. So little subtle value changes like that are really gonna help make your drawing more accurate. There's a little bit of darker value here. A little bit of darker value under the eye because we have our eyeball sits underneath that part of our skin. And then I'm gonna get a light gray going in this area. Now I might see some of like the lines or marks that this blending stump makes as I blend, and I just need to be patient. I'm gonna turn the direction of my blending stump as I go. I'm not applying a lot of pressure so that I don't get those like streaks going through. I'm gonna apply a little bit more pressure here where the curve of the nose is. So I don't even have to use the value from my pencil if I don't need to. Eventually I'll go back in here with my pencil to make that line a little bit more crisp, but I don't feel like I need to yet, right? One step at a time where you can only focus on so much. I still didn't erase my grid line enough everywhere, so I need to go back and change that. And now I need to start evaluating how my values are matching this image. So is this gray dark enough? I think I need to keep layering over this just a little bit more so you can kind of hold your drawing as close as you can get it to those areas. You could just lightly turn or bend your paper like this. You just don't want to fold it or crease it to kind of compare those values. You just want to try and get close overall. All right, so the skin tone, if it's smooth in a spot, it's gonna take a few layers, just very lightly, like I'm not applying too much pressure at all, just to work it back and forth to get it a little bit smoother. And then if you have like little wrinkles or details over the top or freckles, just like with our skull drawing, those things are probably gonna come later. So right now I'm just trying to get an overall skin tone, and then I'll come back to make it way more detailed. Some of you might work more detailed right away, and that's fine. One other thing I wanna mention over here too with the skin tone is that there's skin and hair in this area. So I wanna think about the layers that this information happens. The skin comes first, the hair sits on top of the skin. So we can think about that with our own bodies as well. Our skin layer comes first and then hair over the top. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of just blending right over the hair lines that I had made so that I can get the skin tone down first. Once I'm really happy with this value and I think it is accurate for that space, then I can come back and do the hair over the top. So again, we have to be patient and understand that this person is not going to look exact right away. It's going to take work, it's gonna take layers to get there. So I'm gonna just drag my blending stump around that hairline where it's a little bit darker because the head is starting to go back in space here, right? Our head's round. To make it look round, I need to move my blending stump in the correct direction and make sure I'm showing those values dark to light. Otherwise, things are going to look flat. Again, with the skin tone here, I'm really focused on the smooth value at first. There's a shadow underneath her bangs here. So I'm gonna make that area of the skin just a little bit darker. And then I have a little bit of the eyebrow sketched in. I'm just gonna make the outline a little bit darker because again, I want to get some skin tone down first over that eyebrow because there's skin and then hair. So that's the order that I'm working in. The eyes here are just slightly darker towards the center. They get a little bit lighter towards the middle and then a little bit darker. And again, we did that with our practice eyes, and that's what's gonna help them look a little bit more three-dimensional. I'm shading right over the top of the eyelashes. I need to go over this line so that I don't lose it because I'm blending over the top and I might lose that sketch that I made before, and I'll just blend over it here. This part of the eye right here is a little bit darker. It might be makeup that she's wearing. It might just be like the angle of the eyelid and it's just catching more shadow. But if I observe that it's a little bit darker, I want to make it a little bit darker. And then later I'll do the eyelashes over the top. One of the most common mistakes I see is people add too much detail too soon before they still have the first couple of layers to do while blending. So our people are gonna start to look kind of creepy for a while. And you know what, that's okay. That I notice that a lot in my work as I'm blending. It takes a while to get everything filled in. So embrace that, understand that that's just a part of this process. And that means you're doing it right. So I'm just gonna continue to work my way around the skin tone here. One thing that we wanna look for is harsh stopping and starting a value. So if a value stops and starts really harsh, for example, the nostril. So I'll get to that part later in the next video. But areas that blend smoothly are gonna look like they transition smooth, and areas that stop and start really fast have to do that. So for example, by the neck, I have this shadow that makes this area stop and start a lot faster, and then these values transition a lot more slowly. So we want to look for those. Does it stop really fast, or does it blend smoothly from one section into another? So by having this value stop really fast, I'm going to be able to see where the edge of the chin is compared to the kind of shoulder area that's starting behind there. If it blends from here into the face, it's just gonna look like a part of the face and not like it's a separate part of the body. So pay attention to what areas stop and start really fast and what areas blend together slowly and transition from dark to light to dark to light slowly. And then this area is a little bit more of that slow transition, but there's a little bit of harsh value here by the chin, and that's what's gonna help me differentiate between the face and the neck a little bit more. So I'm using my smaller, thinner blending stump when I can. And then the larger one, don't just rely on that small one once you start going. Switch back and forth when you need to, because that small one might make lines in your blending. So I have a little bit of value down. I wanted to see how that works. I add a little bit more when it's not quite dark enough. So use your tools back and forth, back and forth. Do not be afraid to erase. If something gets too dark too fast, that's normal. It's going to happen, and we want to know how to handle those situations instead of giving up and getting frustrated. If something gets too dark too quick, we're going to gently take our eraser over the top and just start to lighten it up a little bit at a time. Then we might need to blend more. All right, so I'm going to continue to work around for the skin tone. So just remember to look for those transitions and be careful with how you're using your tools. Continue to follow along with more videos for other pieces to this puzzle that we're doing.